authoring is an interesting approach that I think a lot of vendors have taken to structured authoring. And the reason I say this is, I've been involved in software design and best practice of software design for as long as I've been working in Authorit and before, so probably 20 years. And I remember getting it beaten through my head at a very early stage what the fundamentals of good software design are. And essentially, you have three main tiers that you're supposed to deal with in design of software. You've got your persistence layer, which is your data storage layer. You've got your business logic layer, which is how you enforce business rules on the data. And then you've got your interface layer, and that could be a user interface, like a Windows interface or a browser interface, or an application programming interface or API. So that's the way you communicate or work with the software through the business logic layer to the data. So that's what best practice software design is, and you'll find that throughout all enterprise level software and even most desktop software, because that's best practice. And it's scalable and it's the best way to do things. Now, you take XML, for example, and the way it's been applied to documentation, it breaks one of those fundamental rules, and that is XML wraps up the data inside the business logic. So the content model, and which people refer to often as a schema or DTD, that is actually your business rules. Take DITA, for example. You are writing content to the DITA standard, and in order to do that, you're wrapping up your content inside a set of business rules and storing it that way. And so that's a fundamental problem, and it's a fundamental problem that I've always had with the way that XML has been applied to the documentation or writing industry. I can see a lot of issues with that. So in Authorit, we wanted to avoid that problem because we want to retain our scalability. We want to retain the ability to do things like Authorit Extend, which require very sophisticated indexing that you just can't achieve if you're storing your content wrapped up inside the content model. And we wanted to maximize the reusability of content. So we've separated the whole concept of structured authoring, or the content model that you want to apply, or the set of rules you want to validate your content to, from the way in which the content is persisted into the database. So we haven't changed that. The content is still stored and structured in a logical relational fashion, and the business rules are then defined and applied on top of that through the user interface or the programmable interface. So to give you an example, you can now take a topic or a topic type, or let's say it's a task, and you can apply a set of rules through a very nice interface that doesn't require any kind of programming or working in XML or the XSDs or working in any of the DTDs or those sort of tools. You go in there, drag and drop, create your rules that say, I want this type of paragraph here, I want this to be enforced, I want so many of these. You put all of those rules in, and then now any topics that are created based on that type, let's say it's task, are validated to it. And you can enforce that validation through the workflow state. So you can, for example, say, it's okay for it to be invalid to the business rules when it's in draft, because I know my authors are still working on it and they haven't completed the job. But once it enters a review stage, it must be valid, because what's the point of reviewing it if it's not valid to the structure? Or once it's going into release, it must be valid. So that's the way that we've implemented it within Authorit, and that gives us enormous flexibility. For one, the content can actually be reused across more than one structure. Right? For another, if you're a group or team of writers looking to migrate your content, let's say from document formats like Word or FrameMaker, or even other formats like HTML or help systems, it is very unlikely that your content is currently going to be sitting in the exact structure that a content model like DITA would prescribe. So not only do you have to convert your data, which is difficult enough in its own right, but now you're in a position of having to rewrite a lot of the time much of the content you've already developed so that it meets that prescriptive structure that's been defined in DITA. How much time is that going to take? How many months or even years is it going to take you to go through all of your content and do that? And how many deadlines do you have to meet in the meantime? So the model that we've taken allows you to import all your content, continue delivering it to your deadlines, and over time get your topics to to be able to validate to the content model that you've chosen to implement in your organization. So it's a much more practical approach to the problem and gives you the benefits of being able to impose a content model moving forward, so all new content is going to match that, but still be able to continue publishing with content that doesn't quite meet the content model, which is very important. It does give you that flexibility of continuing to deliver your content and be able to enforce new content into that model. So it's a different approach, and we may even get criticism from some of the purists, but we believe that in a practical world where people have deadlines and people have jobs to do, it's the one that's actually going to deliver the most benefit in the beginning. And look, if you have to go revisit your content, a lot of the benefits that you are moving to a content management system to achieve disappear. A lot of organizations move to achieve downstream benefits such as localization savings, such as review and engineer time savings. If you're having to touch all of your content just to move to the system, where are all of those benefits gone? They're gone down the toilet. So you must be realistic about your objectives and stick. And if you can't achieve the return on investment, then there's no point in navigating down this path in the beginning. So we're trying to provide that practical approach, and that's the idea behind our approach to structured audit.